At this time, 20 years ago in 2004, we would have been halfway through The Sopranos Season 5, at the start of The Shield Season 3, also at the start of Deadwood Season 1, and a few months away from the start of Lost Season 1 and The Wire Season 3. 15 years ago in 2009, we would have been just starting Breaking Bad Season 2, and just a few months away from the start of Mad Men Season 3 and Dexter Season 4. And then 10 years ago in 2014, Season 1 of True Detective would have just ended. Season 4 of The Walking Dead would have also ended. We would have been at the start of Game of Thrones Season 4, and a few months away from the start of Boardwalk Empire's 5th and final season. Then, just 5 years ago in 2019, we would have been a few months removed from Season 4 of Better Call Saul, and a few months away from the start of Mr. Robot's 4th and final season, Season 2 of Succession, and Stranger Things Season 3. Since the early 2000s, it seems like there's always been several prestige TV dramas airing throughout the year. Over the years, some of these shows enjoyed overwhelming success through record-setting ratings, such as Lost, The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, to name a few, though others gained a more niche audience and were lauded by critics and award bodies alike, such as The Wire, Mad Men, Better Call Saul, well, 0 wins, but a lot of nominations. Though, of course, some managed to bridge this gap and succeed in both aspects. A show like The Sopranos comes to mind. For this reason, many coin this period the golden age of television. Some people debate what the exact period is and when it formally began and ended. But I think it's pretty clear that we are no longer in the golden age today. Last year we said goodbye to HBO's Succession, and along with it, I would argue, the very last remains of what was left of this period of prestige television. We have now officially reached a turning point in TV. Let's get into a few of the reasons behind this turning point. The first one I want to talk about is oversaturation. According to the Slate article, about 370 scripted shows were on the air in 2015, compared to about 599 in 2022. That is an outrageously large number. Even in 2015, that was really surprising to me that that number was that high. And to then see it at basically 600 scripted shows in 2022, just, a year ago, that was insane to me, right? And of course, that's not, that is, counting comedies and a lot of other shows, not just kind of prestige dramas or the kind of show that I'm, mainly referring to here in this video, but that's still a whole lot of scripted shows that's on the air or on streaming services, on cable networks. Like, that is just so many, and it really is too much. One of the main reasons for this, I think, is because you have, services like Amazon, Prime Video, Apple TV Plus now, Netflix, Disney Plus. You have, especially Amazon, Apple, and Disney Plus, to me, these are places that just print money, right? They have endless money to kind of throw at projects. Because, obviously their main business is not making, shows and movies, right? And so they can use the revenue that they get from these other sources, in terms of Apple, obviously, smartphones, Amazon, all the stuff they do with the shipping and all that. So they can use this money and put it towards these products and have no worry, at all that if some of them fail, what are they going to do? And they just don't have that. There's really no risk to a lot of this stuff. And so they just greenlight a whole lot of stuff. And especially Netflix, I feel like people have been complaining about this for a long time, is that they just greenlight a whole lot of stuff and fill their, platform or their service with a whole lot of stuff that not a lot of people watch. Like, it really is just filler to kind of put on in the background and doesn't really generate any buzz. So this has been a problem, especially with Netflix, right, for a few years now, especially their movies. I've noticed that for going on like at least 5 or 6 years now, right? Like, some of these movies on Netflix are just like made to be mediocre, just to be made to be kind of that middling thing that literally, you know, I guess you like misclick, you know, and it comes on and you like maybe watch some of it, or maybe you get sucked in, you watch the whole thing. But these are not shows or projects that are made to really be successful or to be enjoyed by a lot of people, right? And so that's been going on for years, but this new thing is really Amazon and Apple and even Disney as well. Like I said, just throwing all this money that they have to lose basically at these projects, and just throwing a lot of stuff on the wall. Some of it'll stick, as we've seen with Apple, right? A few of the shows will stick. Amazon maybe less so, but they've had some successes as well. You know, if the Boys comes to mind, right? So they throw a lot of stuff at the wall. Some of it sticks, and they're okay with that. And that's really, really contributed to that oversaturation of shows right now. There's just too many out there. And when you have that many scripted shows going on, there is just not enough talent, and especially in terms of the writing, I feel like, but also acting, you know, directing, everything that goes into it, like literally the crew members as well. There's just not enough people to work on these projects and to deliver high quality work on these projects when you have that many going on. So that is a big one, oversaturation. Next, I want to talk about the focus on spin-offs and reboots of already existing IPs. This one really gets to me, and this has been a huge deal in movies as well. We've seen this like so much over the past decade even. I feel like TV, this has only happened in the last like 5 years or so, but this has been a whole trend with just kind of media in general, right? But if you're talking about TV stuff, you don't have to look much farther than AMC right now with The Walking Dead. This to me is one of the prime examples, not just because I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead, you know, original show, but just it really sticks out, right? AMC, which was home to Mad Men, Breaking Bad. I mean, like I already talked about a couple of those shows, right? Just prestige television, the best of the best. And in the last few years, the biggest things that they've been greenlighting are Walking Dead spin-offs, right? We got The Ones Who Live, Daryl Dixon, Dead City, Tales of the Walking Dead. We had World Beyond. So they are just making these spin-offs of The Walking Dead and not greenlighting more shows that are like Breaking Bad or Mad Men. They're, you know, and I'll get into this later, but original shows, you know, that are not based on already existing IPs. And so they're just really beating the dead horse here, and they're going to keep doing it because they get the ratings for these Walking Dead spin-offs. Obviously not as good as the original series, but it brings in viewers, they get the ratings, and they're going to keep doing it. And I would really bet a lot of money that they'll make even more spin-offs here going forward of The Walking Dead. So that's a big one. Another one, I mean, let's just think about it. HBO, one of the biggest, if not really the biggest, for prestige drama TV shows, even comedies as well, you know, over the years, especially in that golden age of television like I talked about. Their biggest show in 2024 is, you guessed it, a spin-off of Game of Thrones, of course, called House of the Dragon, which, don't get me wrong, I'm very much, it's one of my most anticipated shows for this year. I'm really looking forward to it, but it's a spin-off of Game of Thrones, and the best news is that there are more spin-offs coming in the future. We already have heard of the Jon Snow one. They did a pilot for a different spin-off that didn't get picked up. They're doing another pilot now for a different spin-off, I believe about Aegon's Conquest. So they even, you know, the top of the top, or the best of the best in terms of networks and, you know, cable, you know, services and channels here, HBO is even falling, you know, victim to this. And this isn't obviously the first time in the last, you know, decade that they've done this, but they are really pumping out spin-offs of Game of Thrones. And like I said, their biggest, at least right now, the way it looks for this year, is a spin-off of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. And that's probably where they're putting the majority of their money this year, is in that show, or at least the most money to any given project. It'll definitely be House of the Dragon for this year. Then you get to Paramount Plus with Yellowstone. We've already gotten, I think it's 2 spin-offs of Yellowstone, and the show has ended now, right? So that was two spin-offs when the show was going, and then they've already greenlit another one that's coming, another one of those years, right? So they had 1888, I believe 1923 was the other one. Now they have another one like that with the years, and then we have another spin-off now with Matthew McConaughey, kind of a different version of the show. Some people call it like the Taylor Sheridan universe, right? Because he has actually a few other shows there at Paramount as well. But they're doing the same thing with Yellowstone, right? Yellowstone is a big, huge, successful show. I mean, literally one of like the top 5 most successful shows of the last probably 5 years or so. They're going with spin-offs. Like that's their main focus, and those are their biggest shows. And like I said with HBO, they'll be sinking probably the most money that they are sinking into projects right now are going into Yellowstone IP projects and spin-offs like that, right? So that's the spin-offs. That's the big focus on those already existing IPs. And then you get to the reboots of shows. This was, to me, again, being a Justified fan, just speaking from my own fandom here, we had Justified City Primeval this past year, which, I thought was good. I enjoyed it, but it's a reboot. They're rebooting the original series that ran, that ended, I believe it was in 2015 or 2016. And this is FX. Again, you want to talk about like the best of the best. You're probably going AMC, HBO, and then FX. Maybe not even in that order. Maybe FX is number 1 for you, right? This is FX putting a lot of money into a project last year, and it was a reboot of a series that already ran years ago. I mean, 8 years ago, right? Now they're bringing Timothy Olyphant back to play Raylan Givens and doing a reboot of Justified rather than something, original or something else that they could have put that money into, of course, right? And then, Perry Mason on HBO also came to mind, right? Those are just two of the reboot ones that came to mind, of the past, year or so, right? So Perry Mason was a big one. Season 1, I think, aired in 2020. Again, HBO, they put a lot of money into that series as well. I watched season 1. If you've seen the series, you could tell that they put a lot of money into it. It looked great. I will say that. And again, it's a reboot of the original series, Perry Mason, that ran, and I guess that kind of character, that IP that a lot of people would know, right? Like older generations would know, newer generations would know. They get the eyes on it. They get that existing IP, and that's what they chose to do. And that's what they greenlit, is a reboot of Perry Mason. So I'm sure there's a lot of other reboot examples, but those are just a couple that came to mind within the last year or so, right? Okay, another one I want to talk about is adaptations of books and video games, right? This, to me, especially within the last, again, like 5 years or so, now, adaptations of books has been a huge thing. And even some of those names, shows I named off the top here, of the best prestige television, of the golden age of television, yeah, they were based on books. Dexter was based on a book, right, I believe. Boardwalk Empire was based on a book, or at least, real life, people and stories, right? So I'm not saying that a show can't be good if it's based off a book, but there is such an overwhelming amount of book adaptations, and now video games has become, I think, the big one. So a few that I just want to mention as of doing this video right now: Shogun on FX, the miniseries, is perhaps the biggest show right now on TV that everyone is talking about. I have not seen all of it yet. But it's a big show. A lot of people really enjoying it. It's based on a book, of course, right? It's based on a book. Then we got Fallout on Prime. Again, huge show, just came out, I think, as of recording this, a couple days ago. Huge show, really, big marketing. A lot of people excited for this on Prime, based off the video game. Ripley on Netflix was a big one. A lot of people were looking forward to this week that came out. Of course, based on the book, and I believe the movie, right? And then you want to look back to last year, some of the biggest shows. We had Silo on Apple, based off a book, and of course The Last of Us, which is probably the biggest example of this on HBO, and that was a video game. Now, I don't want to take anything away from it. Obviously, I watched it. I quite enjoyed it, and a lot of people are saying it's one of the best adaptations of a video game ever done. So again, I'm not taking away from it, but I'm just pointing out the fact that there is more and more adaptations of video games and books happening. And I think Last of Us is the biggest example of a video game. And then you want to talk about some, there's a lot of other video games right now, especially in the movie sphere as well, right? There's just a ton of them happening right now. And I think that's the new biggest trend, that's starting for sure in the last couple of years. Then you want to talk about all of the Marvel shows. I mean, I guess you could, I wasn't sure where to put this even, if you want to talk about it in spin-offs, or if you want to talk about it of adaptations, right? Of course, it's adapting the original Marvel characters from the comics. But there are so many of these shows now on Disney+. I remember when it was Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Punisher on Netflix, right? And that was mainly it. And then now we've gotten just so many, like She-Hulk, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki. I mean, you could just go on. I'm not even sure exactly how many there are. I'm not that interested in these types of shows, but I'm sure a lot of people are, and a lot of people have watched them, and a lot of money, I can guarantee you, has been sunk into them by Disney over the past few years here. And there's so many of them. There's just, there's literally a new Disney, Marvel show happening. It seems like every month there's a new one out. So, those you can definitely, rope into one of these categories here of what I'm talking about. And then I also wanted to mention these Hulu miniseries. There are so many of these every year now, at least for the past, again, 5 years, I want to say. There are just so many of these each year where it's based off a book. It's usually these, something like Sharp Objects comes to mind, right? It's usually these detective crime mystery novels, and they adapt them into a limited series, usually 8 episodes or 10 episodes, something like this, Under the Banner of Heaven a couple of years ago was a big one that I liked. Again, I like some of these. I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm just pointing out the fact that there are a lot of them. There's a lot of Hulu miniseries over the last few years, and they're all based on books. I honestly don't remember right now an original miniseries that aired on Hulu over the past few years. I can't even think of one. I'm sure maybe you could find one. Dope Sick, also a huge one, right? A couple years ago, or last year that comes to mind. So there's just so many, and Hulu's really pursuing that kind of element there of having, okay, here's a famous book that some people would probably know, or that a lot of people would know in some cases. Let's adapt that into 8 episodes of a limited series and put it on Hulu. So yeah, they are huge culprits of these adapting books into miniseries there for Hulu for sure. Okay. Another thing I want to talk about is network TV, because I think that goes a little kind of under the radar here when we talk about peak television, the golden age of television, and where we're at now, which I would argue is kind of this turning point, right? So the death of network TV is the way I want to refer to this as, or kind of title it as, right? Nowadays, when you look on network TV, and I'm going to be honest, I don't watch a lot of network TV. It's just not my thing. At one point, many years ago, I want to say 2017, 2018, on the channel here, I covered several network shows. I watched some of them. I enjoyed some of them. But now, I can't. It's almost exclusively law, fire, cop, or medical dramas. That is just about the extent of what network TV has now become. And then you get, I really try to check out at least 1 or 2 network shows each year, because I don't want, my kind of lens or my kind of radar to be completely turned off of network TV, because I think we still do get some good stuff from it. And so I really try to check out at least 1 or 2, like I said, each year. And I check out some of these shows, and I obviously I'm going to look for a more unique kind of, interesting show besides all these cop, fire, medical, law dramas that are on. And it feels like every one that I check out, yeah, I'm not saying that they're amazing, but they almost all get canceled after 1 season. That's just how it is on network TV right now. Obviously comedy is a little bit different, but it's kind of the same too. It's a lot of the same stuff that's just boiled into a few different characters and a slightly different premise. And that's what we're going with in terms of, sitcoms and this kind of thing with comedy. But in terms of the drama, yeah, it's just, if it's not a new, Chicago Fire, put it in a new city and name it Fire, or PD, or Med, or, a Law and Order, like a new Law and Order spinoff, it just gets canceled. Like, they just don't care about the show. They don't give it any chance to really catch on. It just gets canceled. If it's unique or stands out in any way, they just can it, and that's it. That's it for the show. At least that's how it seems to me, with how, the shows I've checked out in the past few years here. It's just really, really unfortunate, because you think about it, and this is what I want to talk about network TV, because, again, I feel like it kind of goes under the radar, but this was once home to shows like The X-Files, The West Wing. I know those are, quite a long time ago now, but, Lost more recently, Fringe was a big one. Like, could you imagine a show like Fringe on network TV right now, today? No way, right? Like, no way it would even get greenlit. And if it did, it would certainly get canceled after one season. Like, there's no chance that a show like Fringe could ever succeed and have longevity in today's world of network TV. And it's just unfortunate. Like, at one time, that type of show ran for, it was like 4 or 5 seasons, right? So, and then also This Is Us, I wanted to mention too. That's a more recent one that only ended a couple years ago. And that was a big one for them. That was like their last kind of, foothold rather in the Emmy conversation, right? That show was up for awards every year, got a lot of good buzz. And again, that was unique in the sphere of network TV, at least. Obviously, it was a, fairly cliche show, showing some more familiar territory, but at least it was unique. It wasn't a Law and Order, or like I said, Chicago Med or Chicago PD and all this stuff, right? It was a bit of a unique show. I think a lot of people would consider it prestige television. The Emmys certainly would. And that show is over now, and has there been anything on that level, like even close to that level now, that's, again, even been greenlit? Like, not even that it's good and that people are talking about it, like, that it's even on the air on network TV. Like, I don't know. It's just a really sad state of affairs here for network TV, at least to me. Again, like I said, I really try to check out a couple of shows a year. I think there are, 2 to maybe 5 TV shows a year on network TV the past few years that they do greenlight. But again, I don't think a single one of them has seen a season 2 from what I've seen so far, at least. So that's that. And of course, I know the strikes last year have affected network TV, so I'll give it a chance for this year. Obviously I'll give it a little more time this year to see the types of shows that they, put out. But that has not been an excuse for the past, 3 or 4, maybe even going on 5 years now for network TV and what it's become. So this all boils down to one question: where is the original content? And to me, this is the main point of where we are right now, right? Why we've reached this turning point and why we are no longer in the golden age of television. Now, like I already mentioned, some of the best shows of all time, right? Like some of those I talked about that are, a lot of people consider to be of the best of that golden age, are not original ideas, not entirely at least, right? Like a lot of them are, but yeah, they are based on a book or based on some true events or some, stories in that. But they are certainly in the minority. If you want to talk about shows like The Wire, Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, Better Call Saul you want to throw in there, Lost, a lot of the big shows, the majority of the big shows, Deadwood, another one that comes to mind, I could go on. A lot of these shows are original ideas from writers, creators that had this idea and that went to a TV studio or a channel, a network, and pitched this idea, and they greenlit the idea because they liked the idea, right? They liked the idea. They think it could succeed over seasons of TV, and they really kind of invested into this. I don't think this is happening anymore. Like, to me, this just doesn't happen, unfortunately. And we have some exceptions, right? Of course, we have some exceptions. To me, some of these exceptions, again, this is just my opinion, right? The Bear is to me maybe the biggest example, actually, of original content from a creator that had an original idea. So The Bear, Severance is a big one, a very original idea there. Stranger Things, it's barely an original idea to me. Like, yes, it is, but it's obviously, really utilizing nostalgia and a lot of references to other things. But at its core, it is original. The Duffer Brothers came up with that original idea and went to Netflix. So that's definitely an example. Yellow Jackets, I think in the last couple of years really stands out to me as an original idea. Again, using kind of a concept like Lord of the Flies that we've seen before, but really adding an original feel to it. So that's one. Obviously, Beef on Netflix, the limited series. That, to me, is a huge exception, especially for Netflix. And that was an A24 project that Netflix actually just picked up. So I don't even know if you could give credit to Netflix on that one necessarily. But that was an original idea for Lee Sung-jin, who put that one together. So there are some exceptions, but overall, and those are like really the only ones that I can think of just in the last couple of years and going forward for shows that are still even continuing that fit that kind of category. And Stranger Things is ending next year with it, or at least whenever that next season comes out, it'll be done. So you can remove that one from the list as well. So it just doesn't happen anymore. Networks and streamers simply no longer trust creators or producers to create an original story and characters and really buy in to these ideas and literally greenlight them, put them ahead and say, yeah, we love this idea. We want to work with you and we want to go ahead with this project. To me, it just doesn't happen anymore. They just no longer trust these creators and these names, these people, especially, and I mean especially new creators and new people that haven't had a lot of experience. Of course, it's always been like that, but in the past, it was definitely more common, right, to have these newer names, these newer faces come in and do this. And that's why Yellow Jackets really sticks out to me, because Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson, the creators there, had not done a lot of stuff before that. And so for Showtime to greenlight that project meant a lot. And I think that was really great. But again, massive exception to what is happening now. And the main reason for this, why I think it doesn't happen anymore, why networks and streamers are afraid to do this, or they no longer trust creators to come up with these original ideas, is that they can take time, right? They can take time to catch on and may not generate those immediate views or those immediate streams in the case of Netflix and streamers, right? When you use an existing IP, like Walking Dead, let's talk, for example, right? Like I said before, Walking Dead. Okay, AMC is going to make a spin-off of The Walking Dead. Okay, now obviously not all the viewers that watch Walking Dead and made it, one of the highest rated shows of all time, are going to tune into the spin-off, right? It's just been so many years, people aren't as interested in it as they once were, right? Of course. But you're going to get a massive chunk of people who used to watch The Walking Dead or are still really invested, like myself. I guess I'd throw myself in there because I still watch the shows. But you're going to get that chunk that tunes into the show. That's immediate viewership, immediate streams, in the case of AMC Plus or whatever, of people that will go on and watch that show. Now, let's switch. AMC, greenlights a project, let's even say from a new face creator, right, with an original idea. Well, they got to market that thing, right? They got to put a lot of work into marketing that, getting people to watch it, right? And getting people to watch it on the premiere night and check it out. And it takes time, even with the best marketing. Like, Breaking Bad is such a great example of this, because in season 1, even like going into season 4, right? The ratings were just not that high for that show. And then look where it ended up in season 5. And then when it went on Netflix after that, and for the past, I mean, literally decade since it was on Netflix, it is one of the most popular TV shows of all time, right? And so it takes time for these original shows that are not just immediate eye-catching, oh, I know the name of that, or I know that universe, I know that face because he's the character in that, right? Or, oh, I know that name, I used to watch that show 20 years ago. There's none of that with an original idea, and so you don't get that immediate viewership of, oh, you know what, I recognize that, I'm going to watch that actually, or I love that universe, I need to watch the show. Like, in the case of the Marvel Disney shows, it's like, if I want to watch the next movie next month, I need to catch up on all these shows to understand what's going on. So I am going to watch that show the day it comes out or the week it comes out. So that's the issue here, right? It's a pretty easy decision when you think about it for AMC, right? It's like, especially, in terms of the way that a lot of executives think, which is unfortunate, of course, which is probably at the core of this topic as well, is money. Money, revenue, right? That's the way they think. And of course, using those pre-existing IPs is going to generate the most views and, that immediate stream, those immediate clicks, right? And unfortunately, that's just kind of a general trend of today's world, right? Is that immediate click. Now, having said that, if you actually get an original show, though, with an original idea, and you let it, kind of grow, and you let it run for a few seasons, you can have something like Breaking Bad, which, let's be honest, like Breaking Bad, obviously that's an extreme example because of how successful it was, but that is bigger than like a lot of other shows ever, right, all time, and that's an original idea, not a pre-existing IP that someone just recognizes and checks out. And another thing about these pre-existing IPs, these reboots, a lot of them just aren't very good. Like, it's just kind of a fact, right? Like, a lot of them just aren't very good. So yeah, you get the immediate click, you get the immediate stream, but then after the first season or after a few episodes, people just drop off because it's not very good, right? And that is kind of a problem, not even necessarily a knock on the creators of these reboots or spinoffs. It's just that it's hard. It's hard to get like, how many really successful spinoffs have there been in the history of TV, right? Like, not a whole lot of them, right? And so when you get, it's tough. It's tough to do a spinoff or a reboot and make it good or make it satisfying for those, people that recognize that IP and are coming back, right? So that's tough. It is. And so, obviously, you're not going to retain the viewers long term. You're going to get that immediate click, but you're not going to retain those viewers. Again, that original series, you give it a couple years to grow, and long term, I think it is, more successful. Obviously, there's exceptions and all that, but overall, I think it's a more successful thing long term, but that's not the way these networks and streamers are thinking anymore. And back then, again, greenlighting Breaking Bad, greenlighting The Shield, greenlighting Deadwood, greenlighting The Sopranos is probably the biggest example of that. Like, HBO was out of their mind for greenlighting that and letting that go, and look at where it is now, right? So these networks and these streamers won't do it, right? They just won't greenlight these projects anymore because it doesn't have that immediate click, and they just have no patience on waiting for these shows to find an audience and really grow and be successful over the long term. So that is the main issue to me. That's what I think of this original content, the huge gaping hole that there is right now. And you can talk about this in movies too. Obviously, this is a video based on TV shows, but movies is a massive one as well. To me, the biggest thing with this, more so in the movie space, in the TV space, I don't even know if we have this. But in the movie space, you still have names like Christopher Nolan, Martin Scorsese, some of these big directors, Damien Chazelle even maybe, that they actually do greenlight original ideas from these guys because they know Christopher Nolan, the name alone, is guaranteed money, right? And in TV, I don't even know if we really have that anymore. Like, we don't even have the last, a few names of people who can make anything they want, right? And the one exception to this, and this is where I want to end off the video here, leave on a bit of a positive note, because there's been a lot of negativity here, is Vince Gilligan. I think he may be the last one, or among the last creators here, because of the success of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, obviously, his great work on X-Files as well, who can go somewhere and have an original idea these days, and they immediately greenlight this project. And that's what Apple did. You know, obviously it's a Sony production, the same as Breaking Bad, so technically Sony got it, and then they, you know, went to Apple and sold it. But Apple did. Apple gave, I believe it's a 2-season order without even shooting a second of footage to Vince Gilligan. So maybe, just maybe, if his show is good, and it should be coming out later this year or in 2025, but if his show is good and it really catches on, I think that he may be able to kind of save this whole thing of the lack of original content. I know it's a stretch, but I think there's a chance that he is maybe the turning point to going in the right direction, like kind of trending back upwards if he's able. And I don't think it'll happen probably in the first season of his show. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if his show catches on, if it's successful, I think that he might be able to kind of break through here and really help in that regard in terms of original content. But to me, he really is the only, or at least among a very few, that could get a commitment like that from a network or streamer these days on an original idea like that. Maybe Taylor Sheridan also comes to mind, you know, with what he's doing at Paramount Plus. But he's also doing a lot of Yellowstone spin-offs as well, not just original ideas. So anyways, that's kind of my hopeful note, I guess, to end off, is maybe Vince Gilligan's show, maybe Yellow Jackets, maybe Beef on Netflix. It was a limited series, but The Bear, right? Severance. Maybe some of these original shows that are just kind of still getting off the ground here, maybe in the future years, you know, in the next couple years, they can really be successful, and maybe we can kind of turn things around here in the right direction. So anyways, that'll just about do it for this one. Let me know your thoughts on all of this stuff, whether you agree with me, disagree with me. What do you think were some of the biggest shows of the golden age of television? When did it end? When did it begin? So much stuff to dig into here. So love to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. But anyways, that'll just about do it for this one. So stay tuned on the channel for more videos coming soon.
Look over yonder. What do you see? The sun is